welcome to Food Rebels. I'm your host, AJ Sharp. I'm a taste expert, food writer. I run a PR agency called Sharp Relations. I'm also a great taste food judge, amongst others. And welcome onto the show. This is the podcast and radio show which brings you brands, trends, stories, and live on-air tastings from some of the coolest and most rebellious businesses around the world, actually. We celebrate the people who've challenged the status quo. And welcome back. We are discussing today, as it's a new year. Oh, Happy New Year. I should have started with that.
Happy New Year, AJ.
And that voice is Christabel Cairns, who you may remember from 2 or 3 weeks ago. Christabel was on the show for the World Cheese Awards, telling us all about that with Patrick and Emma. Welcome back, Christabel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Well, it's the start of January. So what would we be talking about rather than just guessing what's going to be happening for the rest of the year?
Exactly. So we're looking ahead. We've kind of got the excess and the fun of Christmas behind us, and now we're going to see what's going to be on our plates over the next 12 months.
And you really are an expert in this area, aren't you? Because you've got, when you're running Great Taste, you've got 14,000 plus products coming in. You're literally seeing the best of the best new product development coming into your office over that whole Great Taste judging period, aren't you?
Well, we do really, yeah. For the 4 months that are going to be coming up, so March to June, we're going to be getting the next entries into Great Taste. We are opening the doors for entry on Monday, so it opens on the 8th of January. And brands and products and producers will be entered, and we'll be blind tasting them. So it is always really fascinating to see, where the sort of peaks of different categories are, what sort of falls slightly out of favour, where people are going to make their new innovations.
That must be so interesting. And I know as a judge, we really notice different trends coming and going. One year you've never heard of a kimchi and the next year you've tasted 43 different kimchis. It really does go in ebbs and flows, doesn't it? I wonder, there's so many different things. I remember the shots coming through, the sort of Moju shots. I mean, we obviously, when you're tasting it, you've no idea who the brand is. But now, you know that there are a number of different companies doing kind of ginger shots and health shots and things like that, aren't there?
There are. And that kind of, I guess, healthy single or, just a few ingredients is something that's definitely sort of been a big part of food. It's always been a big part of food, obviously, but it's definitely something coming back in fashion. People want to know where their food is made, who's made it, how local it is to them. How processed it is or not. And that's starting to become, really forefront, as well as taste, obviously.
I completely agree with you. And I think that really is the theme of this show, isn't it? It's the ultra-processed foods. It's become the buzzword of across everything, hasn't it? That we know that these ultra-processed foods are really genuinely, they're killing us from the inside out. It's frightening when you actually look up the details about ultra-processed food. And I think we really have to invest now in products that have been made artisanally, that have been made locally, that have been made well. You know where they're from. You know if there's meat involved or fish or something, it's been raised well. And it's not been messed about with too much. The ultra high processed foods, I think it links into this need for functionality from your food. It's come from, we talked about functionality last year, didn't we? And it was a new trend there where everything had something added. It either had a vitamin added or it might have a nootropic added. And there's a function to the food. But what we're seeing is that people do want this function, but they also need it to taste really good. There's a lot of demand, I think, on producers and brands to create products that are ticking every single box. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I think so. Food in itself, it has got a function. We all need to eat. So, and we don't necessarily, if we've eaten well and eaten a variety of products and a variety of well-made things, you don't necessarily need all the additives, all the additions to things. We're talking about new products, but we also see really well-made cheese. We had loads of cheese, 3 stars this year. We see, if you're going to eat meat, well-made meat, people, that I'm going to call it a trend. It's not a trend. It's a sort of necessity and it's a choice, but people spending money on a good piece of meat once a week rather than just going to the supermarket and, needing to eat meat every night and things like that. So there's definitely, I think, people are trying to think a little bit more about which is actually what we've done, as a culture for decades. There's been a lot of corners cut and
we've forgotten.
The information hasn't been there, exactly.
But you're right, aren't you? This is about does everyone need to go and have some sort of functional food with added vitamins, or do they just need to eat really good quality, well-produced, easy foods, almost farm foods, like going back to your veg box, going back to a few pieces of really good meat in a week, not too many, if you eat meat, obviously, keeping it actually quite simple.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm going to be slightly biased on that. We have an organisation that's all about smaller food producers, independent shops, and, we really stand by that message of eat simply, eat well, eat local. So yes, I think that wholeheartedly.
Well, but tell us a little bit about the Guild of Fine Food, because that's where you're from, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're the Guild and Guild of Fine Food, and we are predominantly an organisation for those businesses that I just mentioned. So independent retailers, so things like delis and farm shops, but also specialist shops, urban and in the countryside. So we kind of cover a whole range of businesses, and then also the producers that supply those shops. So that can be anybody from a cheesemaker to somebody who's making some really new funky hot sauce. So it's a real range, businesses that have been going 100 years, businesses that were set up last year. So it's a real range of people. In the main, what they've got in common is that they want to do things well. They're all passionate about what they do. And then we have a range of activities to support them. So we have the Great Taste Awards. We run something called the World Cheese Awards, which we talked about a few weeks ago. We train people to stand behind cheese counters in delis. And we have a monthly magazine as well called Fine Food Digest, which really gives retailers recommendations, merchandising tips and other things to sort of support that end of the sector.
Yeah, so there's an element, isn't there, of education and guiding and things like that. What's really interesting about the Guild of Fine Food is that you do represent a large cross-section of the kind of food world, don't you? I mean, predominantly, you're representing the smaller, artisanal, slower made, if you like, products, aren't you?
I think that's fair to say. We, as I mentioned, that it might be something that is new and has just been put together. But I think without question, there's thought being put into all the products that we represent or that we work with. I mean, it's looking, we're about to chat about trends and kind of what's up and coming. Some things you think, wow, that's a new and interesting idea and I never thought about it. And some things are coming back in fashion. We tinned fish, for example. 10 years ago, I don't think we'd be sat around this table talking about tinned sardines and how delicious they are and tinned anchovies. I mean, they've always been delicious, but they're really kind of having a moment, if you like.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, I'm coming at this from the point of view as AJ Sharp, the owner of a PR agency, and we're involved in, obviously, the food and drink across the board. And we're talking a lot about trends across different areas of food and drink, hospitality and everything. And what we hear a lot about are the trends from the human-based trends, whereas you're much more the sort of food-based trends. And I think the human-based trends are showing a change in people's behaviours as a result of COVID, as a result of the cost of living crisis, as a result of a lot of economic uncertainty for people, whereby they're showing some stockpiling behaviours, some of the behaviours we saw post-war. And I think things that are ambient, i.e. they're not chilled or frozen, they're being stockpiled, aren't they? And I'm not surprised at all to hear that tinned fish is something that you guys are seeing a huge rise in, because we are too.
Yeah, and I think, I was talking about peppercorns quite a lot last year because they were the supreme champion.
Oh, they were good.
Great taste. They were great, weren't they? And, they weren't expensive in the whole scheme of things, and they added like an extra dimension. You could put them on anything from scrambled egg to a steak to a salad. And they really kind of elevated the whole dish. And I think there's that, you sort of mentioned stockpiling, but I think it's also an idea of people having some sort of experience at home. So whether that's replicating a coffee shop experience, so they've bought themselves some really nice coffee and they enjoy it. And I mean, even plays into the sort of mindfulness and not being on our phones all the time and really appreciating the moment. So it's sort of whether that's your coffee at home, or I would say another one is ready to drink cocktails. So the sort of trade name, RTD cocktails. And they're not kind of sticky sweet, they're serious products now, and people are maybe doing that on a Friday night, with some delicious nuts,
And we're seeing everyone with the ready-to-drink cocktails. It's been actually is a trend that I noticed coming through from the smaller brands, the artisanal brands starting the, startups and kind of challengers. And now we've seen, Fever Tree have got ready mix cocktails and things. It's amazing. It's actually gone completely across the board, right up to the market leader.
Well, and you say that. I mean, I think that is a thing that happens quite often, and You might not realise it if you're mainly shopping in a supermarket or something, but so often the smaller brands are the people who kick things off. They might do something and do really well in great taste, and the bigger companies will go, "Oh, that's actually a great idea. We'll try and reproduce something that's quite similar." I mean, a really innovative product I saw this year was a Rooibos tea espresso.
Ooh.
So you make it in an espresso maker, but effectively it's like an espresso. But if you're not drinking caffeine, it's amazing because you can have that whole experience of having an espresso, but it's not coffee.
But tea in the coffee machine. It's in the tea bag in the coffee machine.
It's loose tea. And
Right.
you put it into an espresso maker, so you've got the kind of compression and you're dripping the water through it. But you can have that experience. And I guess the reason I'm mentioning that is because that's catering to somebody who doesn't drink caffeine but wants to be part of the after dinner, or any of us who want to have a sort of after dinner espresso, after a meal, but not have to be up all night because we've all got stuff to do the next day. There's similar things, low to no alcohol drinks, huge boom, which obviously a few years ago there was a couple of niche beer brands or niche drinks makers who were making low to no. Every beer brand's now got no alcohol. I mean, they'd be stupid not to get on that market.
Absolutely right. I went to a trade show not long ago called Lunch and Casual Dining, and the number of soft drink stands was really took me by surprise. There was almost a whole corner of the room just in soft drinks, and I was thinking, why on earth are there so many soft drinks? Is it this sort of health thing? Is it people wanting to reduce alcohol? What do you think's caused it?
I think that's a really interesting one as well, because I think, again, a few years ago, people would have associated a soft drink with a fizzy, sweet. Now, and then if you didn't want one of those, you'd have a water. If you're being fancy, maybe you'd have a sparkling water. But now there's a kind of middle ground where there's quite sophisticated. I mean, we had a hibiscus and rose sparkling soft drink that won 3 stars this year, and several others actually it was a kind of booming category where it's a proper drink, but it's not full of sugar and it's not full of caffeine, but it isn't just water either. So it's sort of got a lot more going on there. Or things, there was another one that was a digestif type of thing, but again with no alcohol in it. So the sort of fermenting and the herbs and things, there was a proper process behind it.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think that's right, isn't it? And I think that ties in with kombucha, of these moments where you may not be drinking wine and you're at a dinner party and you're a grown-up, but you aren't drinking wine for whatever reason. You maybe don't like it, maybe you don't drink, but you don't want something sweet. And I think the alternative is nearly always an elderflower cordial or a sweet drink, and a sweet or a lemonade or whatever you might get offered. Actually having something that's a little bit umami, that's a little bit dry, that is, maybe a tea-based type product. There's so many things like that. Obviously, the kombucha is tea-based. All these kinds of drinks are just absolutely beautiful because they're umami, because they might even have a slight salinity, they might have a minerality, something that emulates wine, goes with your food, isn't this sort of juxtaposed sweet and savoury thing going on. And I think the numbers of people wanting that product has to be rising exponentially.
Absolutely. And I think, it's funny you mentioned tea there. We had a number of sparkling tea brands do really well this year. I would say up until this year, there's maybe been 1 or 2. So it's kind of the anomaly, the niche product, whereas now it is a whole category in its own, and not just sparkling tea. There's sparkling jasmine tea, there's sparkling sencha tea. So there's tea varieties which are coming out, and they've got their own characteristics. You've got kind of really green roasted flavours in sencha tea, or more floral in jasmine. So we had there's a couple that a company called Seisho Drinks, and they did really well in great taste this year, and we had them in the office, and that divided opinion. Some people love the jasmine one, some people love the green tea. It's almost created another category in its own right.
But it's something that is healthier. It's healthier. It's got to be healthier than drinking alcohol, hasn't it? It's healthier for you. And we care more about this. You mentioned earlier mental health mindfulness, but making choices about your food based on your mental health requirements of maybe not because your mental health is out of whack, but because you like to keep it stable. You're making food and drink choices based on how happy you're feeling. And I think that is huge. That's new, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. And I think it's sort of tying all those things together. And, don't get me wrong, love a gin and tonic. But if I'm going to drink one, I'll probably drink one that I sort of, oh, this is an interesting brand, and there's a nice story behind it, and I know where it's made, and it's going to be consistent when I drink it. So I think people are just becoming aware a lot more about where things come from, what their effect is on you, as you say, your mental health or your physical health, and sort of wanting to, I don't know, looking at things a bit more holistically, I think, wanting to know that they're, if they go to the local cheesemonger, that they're buying something that's supporting the local cheesemaker, person who works behind the shop. They then also get that thing, they've probably spoken to somebody rather than just pick it off a shelf.
Right.
So then when they get it home, they can say to their family or their friends that they're sharing it with, oh, do you know about this? And it becomes a kind of whole circle of information, and people like that. They want to feel sort of connected to their food or to their local community.
I completely agree with you. We actually did a whole study last year, I think it was, about micro interactions and how your happiness is dictated more by your micro interactions. So saying hello to the post office or going into the butcher and then remembering your name, or these micro interactions with semi-strangers, acquaintances, has more bearing on your happiness than your spouse or the person that you live with, which I thought was utterly shocking.
That's slightly off topic of the food and drink, but I read in Sweden, there's in a tiny town in northern Sweden, I think it is, where there's not that many people. They've made this project. It's called like Project Hello, or Hello in Swedish. And you have to go and say hi to your neighbours, and with that idea in mind.
That's so lovely.
You like your community, and
I think it's so often though, and I sometimes think, especially if I'm having a bad day, just say hello to everyone. It's going to cheer you up. And I can't really describe why, but it does cheer you up.
It does. And it's what we kind of, the Guild of Fine Food, we kind of bang on about with independent retail. You're going to talk to a person, and that person is hopefully got some knowledge about the products that you're, so you are going to spend your money wisely. And, we train people to stand behind cheese counters with that exact reason in mind, that they will bring a bit of theatre to the selling. They will know about the product. They will give you something more than just the food product.
Absolutely. So different to, a supermarket or something, isn't it?
Plastic wrapped and
if I go, my local fine food shop here is McNaid, and I can go to the butcher and talk to a chap called Simon there, and I can go to the...
So you know his name.
I actually know his name, yeah. And you could go to the cheese counter, and there's some lovely people there who'll chat to you. You'll definitely have a good chin wag as you're packing your bag on the way out. You'll have talked to 3 or 4 people. And it's lovely. If you live on your own or you're having a busy day, it's something that just makes you stop and enjoy the moment of choosing the cheeses or choosing the piece of meat or whatever it may have been.
Absolutely. And behind most of the products, there are people as well. I mean, I stand up at the beginning, and the team stand up at the beginning of all the judging sessions for Great Taste. And we actually remind the judges that somebody is behind the cake or the pie or the cheese in front of them, because I think that's really important. There is a small business who has put their heart and soul into whatever this product is. They've found the best ingredients, or they've found the best way to make it. They want it to do well. They've believed it enough to enter into an award. So the best that we can do as the organisation, as the judges, is to kind of give it its fair shot, give it its chance at sort of making a credible statement to the judges.
And that is absolutely amazing about the Great Taste process. There's other things that I've noticed that have crept in, as well as the tinned fish. There's like frozen products. Have you noticed a big rise in award entries?
Yes, I think so. I think ready meals have obviously been around a while. I'm always surprised at the number of, there's always a few new companies. You sort of see all the packets come in and, on the delivery day. It seems as though quality ready meals, definitely, somebody keeps bringing out a new brand, and it will maybe coming at it from a slightly different angle. So there might be a vegan one, or a convenience one, or your classic favourites of fish pie and shepherd's pie and things like that.
Your Cook are very good at doing that, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, they were one of the original ones.
By Ruby, I've met recently.
But yes, and they're a great company, actually, literally run by Ruby. Good quality products. And I think, we were talking about the kind of the pressures on everybody and that slightly stockpiling tendency. I think, and people are busy as well. People are, they're quite stressed. They're working really hard. They might be juggling family commitments and childcare and things around that. Sometimes you just need something in the freezer, and you still want to make sure you're feeding everybody a decent meal.
It's that element of being kind to yourself, isn't it? I think we've all realised that, I personally think, something's going slightly wrong, that we are all going at 1,000 miles an hour, that our heads feel like they're full of bees most of the time. And I know it's not just me. I know it's a lot of people, and you're juggling your children and family and friends and partners and whoever. it becomes completely overwhelming. And I think part of it is social media. I think part of it's the fact that we look at our phone and there's so much information there, it's overwhelming. But I like that we are starting to look for really good solutions around it. And I do think good quality, well made, not highly processed, but nice, good, honest, home cooked meals like by Ruby or Cook or another. They're a kindness to yourself. They're a kindness to a friend, aren't they? If someone's had a baby or they're going through a horrible time, it's the kind of thing you can drop off with them. And it's so appreciated. Even if you've just taken one meal off somebody's hands at
Absolutely.
a difficult time.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned having a baby. My sister had one in May, and that's what I did. I wasn't quite sure how else to help her. She lives about 100 miles away from me. Turned up with some frozen stuff for her. But, that's what people want. And, no one's saying, actually, do you know what? You need to start baking sourdough. AJ, have a couple of days spare this week to make your sourdough bread. But there might be somebody down the road who makes a really good one. So go there. And, bread's another interesting one, actually, in terms of, I think people are starting to realise. For instance, I don't know whether you know that the word sourdough can actually be stamped on pretty much anything.
Oh,
so
really?
Where you might be going to the supermarket and thinking, oh, I'm getting my lovely sourdough and, I'm paying my extra £1 for that. I wonder why in the bakery it's, £4 or £5, depending where you are in the country, but it certainly is in London. There is a huge process, and actually some of the sort of benefits and how easy it is to digest and things like that come from the fact that it is just literally flour and water. And one thing we don't all have is time, but we can all go and get a decent loaf from a bakery.
Absolutely. And it also plays into another trend, which is ancient grains and good quality grains. I know that I can't eat supermarket bread. I can eat it physically, but I really don't feel very comfortable afterwards. It's not good for me. But a really good quality sourdough loaf that has been made properly using some really nice, locally milled flour or something, that I can have absolutely fine. I don't seem to have this sort of gluten intolerance to it at all. And I think it really comes down to some of the processed things, some of the additives that get put into flours and manufactured bread.
Absolutely. And I mean, we did a really fascinating series of videos which will come out shortly in the summer of different experts talking about different foods. And I remember there's a brilliant guy called Jay Webley talking about hot sauces, and he's a real chili expert.
I've met him.
You've met
He's
him.
cool.
He's a real character. We said to him, look, there are now hundreds of hot sauces, some absolutely fantastic ones, some fermented ones, some that I have to be careful not to, they're not going to explode in the fridge.
Sauce Shop, they're brilliant.
They're very good, exactly, very consistent, great taste winner as well. But, how do I pick a good one? There's loads of them. They've got great branding. He said, turn the bottle around. The shorter the list of ingredients, the better. Definitely, if you don't recognise one of the ingredients and it's some sort of slightly chemically sounding thing, absolutely steer clear. But just in general, the shorter the list. And I think that's quite a good thing to bear in mind for almost all food.
It's a good rule of thumb, isn't it? And I know it's something that it comes back to the ultra high processed foods again, doesn't it? You want the foods that have got the least amount of ingredients and the least amount of processing.
The least amount of messing around, I think.
Your body needs to recognise all the different ingredients to be able to process it properly.
And almost without exception, those things are the things that will end up tasting great.
Yeah, I think aging as well is something that we've noticed in some of the kind of reports and things that have come to us. It is a focus for that kind of precise nutrition. It's a focus for, a lot of this DNA-led nutrition that people talk about. I don't know if you've heard of those sort of Zoe patches and lumen things that you blow into. I think they're partly for weight loss, but they're also partly to understand your body and how your body is processing different things. And the people I know who've got one, I don't, but the people I know who've tried it are absolutely fascinated, because you do this whole food diary on the app and it tells you what your blood sugar's doing behind the scene, and you're eating possibly beer and you have this huge inflammatory response to it. You're sort of going, oh, this is really annoying, but I might not be able to have too much of this.
Yeah, and I think, as you know probably as well, that the jury's still out on kind of long-term what those things do. But I think what's really interesting about them is how much people are interested in them. So it's, again, that holistic view of, I'm eating something. Is it good for me? Is it good for the person, in my family I'm feeding it to? And then just how that kind of then affects your body. I think my belief anyway is that you can eat a little of most things. I don't necessarily subscribe. Obviously, some people can't eat things, but you mentioned not being able to feeling a lot better after eating the good sourdough rather than the supermarket bought bread. And I think it's almost that. It's that kind of moment of, rather than just going, okay, I'm going to eat breakfast, I'm going to eat lunch, I'm going to eat dinner. Okay, good. What do we cook for the next day? It's actually thinking about the food and thinking about how it makes you feel, how it makes you feel emotionally as well as, physically. You sort of then start listening. And I think that's what those things are probably really helpful for.
I think they are. And I think in today's modern, fast, crazy world, I know I spend a lot more time considering the nutritional needs of my children than I do myself. I am an afterthought in the whole process of they've got the organic butternut squash risotto that I've made from scratch. And then my husband goes, well, what are we having? I'm like, just cheese and biscuits, bit of toast. We'll be all right.
I know. And I think we're all desperately trying to carve out a bit more time, a bit more thought, and we sort of want to do the right thing. So sort of eating good food is part of that.
I think so. And I think my last trend that I want to talk about is seeing this hyper-locality coming back in of little kind of ecosystems setting up. I mean, I've certainly seen a few across Kent where you've got a farmer working with a veg box maker, working with a local butcher, and it's all being done in a very, very hyper-local way, being distributed to hyper-local residents in that area. And I think the fact that these businesses are popping into existence again, and I know they always did, certainly 50 years ago, and we saw Riverford doing that well as well, they're coming back. And I think the reason they're coming back is actually people want this slightly slower, slightly less commercialized, supermarket-y type life. They want it to be more simple. They want to know where their food's come from.
Absolutely. And I just think, everybody's under pressure, but you just want to sort of know what it is and where it is, and it's nothing that isn't new, as you said. But I mean, we've just launched this new website a few weeks ago that really talks about where people can buy food, because actually we're busy telling everybody about independent delis and producers, and the number one question I get asked is, what's the best jam and where can I buy it? And people want to support people and businesses and buy good things, but they just don't know how to do it. And so hopefully we can help them a bit with that.
Amazing. So what's the website address for that?
The website address is gff.co.uk. So that stands for Guild Fine Food.
And so how does that work? Can I go on there then and say, right, what's the highest award-winning jam?
Yeah, exactly.
And literally there'll be several different options that have got 2 or 3 stars or something, and
exactly.
I can click on them.
And you can also do things like search your local postcode. So you could pop in your postcode and say, okay, where's the nearest independent shop in my 10-mile or 25-mile radius? We use the example of, I'm going to go on holiday. Where can I buy my, where's the local butcher and that sort of thing.
So is it global?
It is, yeah. I would say it's kind of predominantly UK at the moment, just because of where we are and where but it is.
But it's going to grow. Presumably, if you've only just launched it, it's going to continue to be
Absolutely.
populated.
And we've got 106 countries entered Great Taste this year. So as a start, I've got 106 countries in it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Cool. Well, you'll have to check that out. So that was gff.co.uk. Unbelievably, we are out of time. I could talk about this with you forever. It's so fun. Thank you so much for joining us, Christabel.
Thanks for having me.
And I hope that's given everyone some inspiration for 2024. You've been listening to Food Rebels, which is available on radio stations around the UK. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and please remember to subscribe and rate us, hopefully 5 stars. It makes a huge difference to our podcast. We're also on Instagram at food_rebels, so do give us a follow. Thank you for joining us, and make sure you taste the rebellion.